We're going to take your calls in the next segment, but right now we're going to welcome in a very special guest, easy for me to say, Justin Ferguson, managing editor of the Auburn Plainsman and lead writer for Auburn at the Bleacher Report. Hey, Justin, how you doing today?
Doing well. How are y'all?
I'm doing pretty good. First of all, just tell us a little about yourself. How long have you been with the Plainsman? How long have you been submitting articles for the Bleacher Report?
I started I'm a senior at Auburn. Just got done with my first week of classes as a senior, and in journalism. And a couple of years ago, started writing for the Plainsman on a volunteer basis, doing some sports like volleyball, women's basketball, and ended up working my way up assistant sports editor during last fall. During the season, got to go to SEC championship game, got to go to Pasadena and all that, and was sports editor this past semester, and then got through a couple of people I knew, got in touch with Bleacher Report, and I think I'm in my third month, of writing for Bleacher Report, so that's kind of a new gig for me. But and then just picked up managing editor at the beginning of this summer.
Well, that sounds great. Being a student at Auburn right now is a very, very interesting time to be there. Can you give us a sense on campus about the excitement about the upcoming football season, the Bruce Pearl hire? I would imagine it's a pretty fun time.
It's really exciting just to see just the level of interest. The football team, you talk about from 2012 to 2013, it's just a complete 180. People are really excited about Malzahn and what he was able to do with the Tigers last year, and even more so, you see that after the 2010 season, you had Cam Newton and Nick Fairley lead you to the national championship. But there's more of a sense that this can continue when you see what Malzahn's done with recruiting, and what Auburn has coming back this year, and guys like Nick Marshall and most of the defense, and the Bruce Pearl hire just added on to it. A lot of students really want Auburn to be good at men's basketball again, and it usually gets overlooked at Auburn, but the Pearl hire, I've never seen anything like it. It was unbelievable that first press conference being there and the students. So everyone's excited. It should be a very interesting fall. A lot of excitement as a student.
Yeah, definitely. I was at the Texas A&M game in 2012, and when I left at halftime, it felt like I was leaving a funeral home. And I was there in 2013 at the Georgia and Alabama game, and it felt like I was leaving a 4th of July picnic. It like you said, it is unbelievable the turnaround that Gus Malzahn has made. Well, let's talk about this 2015 recruiting. Auburn has 14 commitments right now. That, to me, that seems like a large number earlier than I can remember. What do you attribute that to?
I think Auburn and Gus Malzahn, they identified who they wanted in this class early, and with the success they had from last year's recruiting class and that turnaround, it got people interested in Auburn in this 2015 class. It got people interested in Auburn quickly, and they've been able to piggyback off that success. You have 14 commitments. That's a huge number right now. Alabama, Penn State, other teams that are high up there with Auburn right now, they have about around that. But then you look at a team who's the powerhouse in the national championship contender like Ohio State. Earlier this week, I was looking. I think they only have 2 or 3 commitments right now in this class, so they've got a lot of work to do. So Auburn is definitely ahead of the game. Commitments can change; they can flip, but Auburn has done a really good job of getting out in front and getting commitments from just some outstanding talent early on in this recruiting cycle.
Well, recruiting is an interesting business. You can have a lot of stars beside kids' names, and it can be really flashy. But if you don't fill your needs, it's kind of ends up being all for naught. Do you think Auburn is doing that right now? Are they filling their needs? What do you think they needed to do to finish out this class the most?
Well, yeah, I think Auburn has done a great job of getting the needs first. Malzahn has as many commitments. You're going to get your needs and then go for the best available players after that. And, it starts with the quarterback. You're losing Nick Marshall. You have some quarterbacks behind him, but you have a quarterback commitment in this class already, a long-time commitment. You're losing 2 running backs. You're picking up 2 of the best running backs in the class, and Vaughn Robinson coming back, and then Kerryon Johnson is the number 2 running back in the country right now, I believe. last time I checked. They've been recalibrating all those rankings this week. But, Auburn needed some depth at defensive back. Needed some depth, especially the star position. They've gotten a lot of guys who can play both linebacker and in the defensive back system. With Ellis Johnson's 4.25, it's very versatile. Auburn's very flexible in what they can do. If there was one thing I think Auburn really needed to close out with, it's probably a couple more big-time offensive line recruits. They're going after guys like Martez Ivey, who's a 5-star tackle, number 1 tackle in the country. But there's several different players along the offensive line they can get. They've already got a good backbone of a class there. But the strange thing, when you look at the last couple of classes from Auburn, is they don't have any defensive line commitments right now. And you look when you had that class with Elijah Daniel and Carl Lawson and Montrezl Adams, that led the way, and Auburn followed that up last year. But they don't have anybody yet. There's a lot of really good defensive linemen in this class in both the high school and the junior college ranks. And Auburn's got some work to do to catch up with some other schools and getting talented defensive linemen like that.
No doubt about it. Darren Payne, Trent Thompson, Dalen Mack, I believe, 3 enormous guys that Auburn has had contact with and would love to land, a couple of those guys. Definitely you can never have enough defensive linemen. One of the different strategies that Gus Malzahn has used, by my count, there were 8 junior college players drafted the entire time Gene Chizik was at Auburn. Gus Malzahn had 6 his first year, 6 the second year, and basically 3 already this year. What do you think about this strategy of going after junior college players?
Well, I wrote about it this morning. I found it really interesting that Gus Malzahn said, when he comes in 2012, he says, all right, we've got some needs we got to get to right away from a 3-9 team. And he said, we're going to use junior college players to fill those needs. And then he said, that probably won't be the norm. But then he turns around and gets 6 more junior college players. And, a lot of times especially in the SEC, when you see teams go out and get junior college players, it's for getting guys who can come in and make an instant impact, like a Cam Newton, like a Nick Marshall. But Auburn's also done a great job of building depth, filling some holes where they might be a little inexperienced down the line. When you think of guys like Xavier Dampier, who was the number 1 junior college center, he's going to back up Reese Dismuke. Because after this year, you're losing a 4-year starter in Dismuke. He's been such a huge part of that offensive line at Auburn. I think Auburn has that mentality, though, where they're going to get the best available players for Auburn. You look at teams like Alabama and LSU, especially Alabama, they like, Nick Saban likes his process of getting guys in from high school and getting that 4-year or 3 years most of the time of commitment, developing them that way. But Auburn has seen no problem in coming in and getting a junior college guy and plugging him in right away. And you'll see that this year from guys like Shaquille Williams, who will probably start, and then a guy like Derek Moncrief probably going to start in the secondary for Auburn as well.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to argue with Auburn over the last maybe 10 years. You look at some of the junior college transfers they brought in, Cam Newton, Nick Farrelly, Desmond Washington, Brandon Mosley, Bryn Bradley, Nick Marshall, Duke Williams, like you said. They've had a lot of success bringing in these guys, and really, interestingly enough, a team that they're going to play this year, Kansas State. Bill Snyder has kind of made a career out of doing this, hasn't he?
Yeah, he has. And, I was reading an article the other day from about a couple months back, and they said that Bill Snyder had signed 70 JUCO players from 2006 to 2012, and Auburn had only signed 18. So he builds his program out there because you have so many great junior college programs. In fact, Kansas State was a leader for Nick Marshall at one point. Auburn ended up swooping in and getting him toward the end of the beginning of last year, rather. And Kansas State, it's interesting. This team, when Auburn goes and plays them this Thursday night in September, this team's very disciplined. They don't make a lot of mistakes. They don't make a lot of penalties because they have that experience of playing in junior college ball, and they're first and second year players to Kansas State, but they're very experienced in what they bring. So I think that's going to be a really interesting test to see how Auburn plays in that second part of that really delayed home-and-home series Auburn had with them.
We've got Justin Ferguson, managing editor for the Auburn Plainsman and lead writer for Auburn at the Bleacher Report. it's an interesting, thing, recruiting a lot of JUCO players. Obviously, Auburn hasn't gone overboard. Like they don't do it quite like Kansas State does, but they are bringing in their fair share, more than they have in the past. Do you see a downside to bringing in so many junior college transfers?
I think the only downside is you don't have as much time with them, as easy as that sounds. With a guy like Cam Newton and a guy like Nick Marshall, Cam was only here for a year, but Nick Marshall's only going to be here for 2 years. So there's a thing, you don't want to base your team on them, because you're going to have to recruit a lot. You're going to have to hit junior college players over and over and over again if you want to build a team like them. And I don't think Auburn has that capability just yet. You got to be able to build that depth with high school players. But junior college players, to fill in these gaps that Auburn may have in the depth chart, I think it's good for that. It's good for making instant impacts and building quality depth. But you wouldn't. I don't think in the SEC you would want to build your team just based on junior college athletes.
Yeah, that's probably true. Justin, we were discussing earlier today, and with the SEC schedule coming out, we were talking about Florida and the lack of playing between Auburn and Florida, and kind of how they've lost that rivalry. Now, some of us that are a little older, we remember a lot of great Auburn-Florida games. But I'm interested, a guy that's a younger guy like yourself, do you think that that's a good idea, bad idea? Do you care that Florida is not going to be on the schedule for maybe twice in the next till 2025?
As someone who's watched Auburn football all his life, you missed that Florida game, and I definitely only playing Florida 2 times in this next 10, 15 years is difficult, because you remember those great games, and I don't remember all these games I've heard some of the callers mention today, but you think about 2006, the Trey Smith block punt for a touchdown, in games like that, and you miss playing Florida, because that's one of the SEC's best teams, and it's a rivalry. It's not as strong as the Georgia rivalry, or definitely not as strong as the Alabama rivalry, but I think a lot of Auburn fans, and I think students that come from around here and know Auburn football, would love to play Florida as often as they would, instead of picking up somebody like Missouri and Vanderbilt and Kentucky rotating every year. They'd rather see Florida than play Florida a lot more.
We got Justin Ferguson, managing editor of the Auburn Plainsman and lead writer for Auburn at the Bleacher Report. Justin, before we let you go, just tell everybody how they can look you up online or your Twitter tag or whatever, how they can look and read your stuff.
All right, the easiest way to find all my stuff is tweet a lot of links. My Twitter handle is @JFergusonAU, and if you search my name, Justin Ferguson, Bleacher Report, or the Auburn Plainsman, you can find me there, theplainsman.com. You can go and look at our sports from there, and Bleacher Report, I'm there under, click on SEC and Auburn and college football. I'm usually right near at the top with the lead writers there.
Justin Ferguson, thank you so much for being a part of Sports Call this afternoon.